Today I'm going to take you on a journey back in time, and for the first time on Stories and Sips we are going north of the border. Very topical these days. We're going to Northern Ireland to introduce you to a very influential whisky from Irish history that's making an exciting comeback today. Welcome to episode number 22 of Stories and Sips. I'm Barry Chandler, an Irishman in America, spreading the good word of Ireland and its whiskies. If you haven't already subscribed to my weekly videos and you want to be the first to be notified of every new episode, you can do so on YouTube by clicking on the subscribe link underneath this video. And so, on to this week's episode. A young John Dunville trained in the whiskey business in Belfast as an apprentice in the early 1800s before striking out on his own in 1825. His venture, Dunville and Company, experienced massive growth for the next 60 years, to the point where its Royal Irish Distilleries was producing more than 2 million gallons of Dunville's Irish whiskey every year. And their two iconic brands, Dunville's VR and Dunville's Three Crowns, were exported to the four corners of the world. And like many famous whiskey families in the 1800s, like the Powers, the Dailies, the Murphys, the Dunvilles, they lived a good life. They had grand houses and eccentric hobbies like hot air ballooning and even a collection of exotic animals that would go on to become the beginnings of Belfast Zoo. But Irish whiskey also allowed them to leave a legacy of philanthropy, which is still evident today in Dunville Park in Belfast, which was the first public park in the city and gifted by the Dunville family, and the establishment of Distillery Football Club, which is still going today. In 1936, after two tragic and untimely deaths left no suitable heir for the business, the board of directors decided to liquidate Dunville and Company and close the distillery. It was one of the very few examples of a whiskey business closing without being forced to. They were actually profitable until the day they closed their gates. And every now and again you'll find a bottle from that distillery come on the market. In fact, L. Mulligan's Whisky Shop in Dublin has one for sale at the moment for the small sum of a little over €1,400. You'd have to drink it if you bought it though. So from 1936 until 2013, the only distillery producing whiskey north of the border was Bushmills. That was until 2013, when local businessman Shane Braniff, with an eye on the future and an appreciation of the past, took over some land and a magnificent property on the Ard Peninsula in County Down. And after considerable development, the Echlinville estate became the first distillery to open in Northern Ireland for well over a century. And then Echlinville first came to the market with their gins. Their Echlinville Irish Pot Still Gin and their Jawbox Gin are award winners in their own rights. But this show is about whiskey, I can hear you saying. Don't worry, we have you covered. Because while the nice people at Echlinville were busy distributing their juniper berry-based brews, they were also busy doing something else behind the scenes, which would cause the whiskey world to pay attention. Now I know I've got you on the edge of your seat with anticipation, and I'll let you in on what they were up to. The Echlinville Distillery had been preparing to resurrect a legend and bring back to life the name of a whiskey practically forgotten for over 80 years. Yes, they'd been secretly planning to bring back from the dead and out of the shrouds of the mist of time the famous Irish whiskey Dunvilles. And resurrected they did, coming out of the gates presenting 3 Dunville whiskies at the World Whiskies Awards in 2018 and walking off with a hat-trick of top honours. The Dunville's PX 10-year-old single malt Irish whiskey and the Dunville's Three Crowns peated both won gold in their categories, and their Dunville's 18-year-old rum finish won Best Irish Single Malt Cask. Not bad going for a newcomer. And just a few short hours before we recorded this video, they won another round of awards at the 2019 World Whiskies Awards, so congratulations to Echlinville. Interestingly, Three Crowns Peated is one of the few peaty Irish whiskies on the market, if that's to your liking. And how they achieve that is by finishing their single malt and single grain whiskey blend in peated casks, which adds the distinctive smokiness. Now we all know making whiskey doesn't happen overnight. It takes even longer when you're intent on reproducing a brand as legendary as Dunville's, while also following the strict terroir ethics used at the Echlinville Distillery. So what's terroir? Well, you might be familiar with it having watched episode 19 of Stories and Sips, where we focused on the terroir-based approach of Waterford Distillery in the Republic of Ireland. And terroir is a word Irish whiskey distillers have borrowed from the world of French viticulture, and it's a magical word meaning of the land, and it encompasses all the elements of nature: sun, rain, the soil quality, and certain geographical location, anything which influences a crop during its growing stages and makes the products created from those crops essentially unique. That's terroir. And recreating Dunville's whiskey has been and will continue to be a work of infinite patience for those at Echlinville. Why? Because, well, it begins with the sowing of barley in their own fields, followed by the slow process of watching it grow and ripen under the often unpredictable Irish sun until it's ready for harvesting. And then once it is harvested, the malting is done on site on their own malting floors, something you don't see very often in distilleries anymore. So when you're there in County Down touring around the distillery and the grounds, you're guaranteed that the barley you see in the fields is what will end up in your glass a few years down the line. So every drop then of Dunville's is impregnated with the nuances of the landscapes you'll drive through on the Ords Peninsula. There are subtle but still distinguishable tastes of that peaty soil, the salty air and the Irish rain. It's a real field-to-glass organic Irish whiskey. Now, not only are the ingredients locally grown, so are the employees. Like Dunville's before them, Echlinville is keen to support their local community with more than just whiskey, but with jobs, which is never a bad thing. So now you know. Although Dunville's whiskey is a recent and very welcome reapparition on Northern Ireland's chronological timeline, the rest of its history, well, Northern Ireland's been working on it for centuries, and here's hoping all these Brexit talks don't make it harder for us to get there or for their whiskies to get to us. I have it on good authority that Echlinville Distillery has a few surprises in store this year with some new whiskey expressions. And if you're in the United States, like many of you are, Total Wines has Dunville's single malt PX cask available for purchase while stocks last. So get shopping. My thanks on this episode to David in New York for sending me a sample of Dunville's PX, to Stuart Quayle from El Mulligan's Whiskey Shop, who juggled a busy shop full of customers last week to get me some footage of that old Dunville's bottle, and to Omar Fitzel for some industry insights, and to Jarlath and Anne-Marie at Echlinville for supplying me with some great stories. I'm looking forward to visiting next time I'm home, and if you're visiting Ireland, be sure to travel north too. It's a grand spot. Sláinte.